I want to talk about something that I think about quite often, and something that many of you are living right now, whether by choice or by circumstance. I want to talk about living alone. I have lived alone for 9 years. Since Robert passed, it has been just me and this small 2-story house that I have called home for over 30 years. And I want to be honest with you. When I first found myself here alone, I did not know what to make of it. The house felt both too familiar and completely strange at the same time. The silence was louder than I expected. But over time, real time, years of slow adjustment, something shifted. The way I moved through this house changed. The way I related to it changed. And the way I related to myself changed along with it. Today, at 72, I can say without hesitation that living alone has given me things I did not know I was missing. Not all of them comfortable at first, but all of them real. And I want to share them with you, 10 of them, because whether you are newly living alone or have been for many years, it helps to name the good things. It helps to recognize what this life is actually offering us. So let us begin. The first benefit is independence. And I mean that word in 2 directions at once. There's independence to, and there's independence from. Both matter. Both are worth naming separately, because I think we sometimes focus only on one and forget the other entirely. Independence, too, means the freedom to organize your life around your own preferences without explanation or negotiation. When I was working as a school librarian for 34 years, my schedule was not entirely my own. When Robert was alive, our mornings, our meals, our routines, all of it was woven together, as it should be in a shared life. But there is something worth acknowledging. When you live alone, you make choices that are entirely yours. I get up when my body wakes me. I eat what I feel like eating. I arrange my home exactly as I want it arranged. If I decide on a Tuesday afternoon that I want to sit in the garden for 2 hours doing absolutely nothing productive, there's no one to consult. That kind of freedom is quiet, but it is real. And then there's independence from, which is perhaps even more significant after a long life of responsibility. Independence from expectations, from obligations that accumulated over decades, from the constant small adjustments we make when we share a space with another person. Living alone means that the shape of your day is no longer defined by someone else's needs. That does not mean we stop caring for others. It simply means the default state of our lives is our own. The second benefit, closely related to the first, is personal space. I think of this less in terms of square footage and more in terms of something harder to define. The feeling that every corner of your home genuinely reflects who you are. Not who you were in 1987, not a compromise between your taste and someone else's, not a room that was set up a certain way and simply never changed, but a space that is actively, intentionally yours. After Robert passed, I spent a long time not changing anything. That felt right at the time. But gradually, and this is where Yuki, my daughter-in-law, had a quiet influence over many visits, I began to see the house differently. Yuki has a way of moving through a space that I admire enormously. She does not rearrange things. She simply removes what no longer belongs, and what remains suddenly breathes. Watching her do that over years of visits taught me something I could not have learned from a book. That a home can either hold you or reflect you. and those are not always the same thing. My home now reflects me. There are things in it that I genuinely love, certain fabrics, certain colors, a particular chair that I moved 3 times before I found its right place in the light. Every bookshelf has been considered. Every surface has a reason for what sits on it. None of that would have been possible if I had not had the time and the solitude to figure out what I actually wanted. The third benefit is control over the home environment. And this one I say with a smile, because I remember very clearly the years when I had very little of it. Temperature is the obvious one. When you live alone, the thermostat is yours. The windows, open or closed, are yours. The noise level, the lighting, whether the television is on or off, what music plays and at what volume, all of it, entirely up to you. These are small things individually, but accumulated across every day of the week, every week of the year, they add up to something significant. A home that consistently feels the way you need it to feel. I am someone who finds certain smells and certain sounds genuinely disruptive to my sense of calm. I discovered this about myself only after Robert was gone, which tells you something about how long it takes to really know yourself when you've always been living in close quarters with other people. Now I know that I work better, think better, and rest better in a quiet house with a particular kind of warmth in the air. I know that because I have had the freedom to observe myself undisturbed for long enough to be certain of it. The fourth benefit is flexibility, and I think this is one that younger women looking at our lives sometimes underestimate. Flexibility does not mean chaos. It does not mean having no structure. For me, it means the opposite. It means having a structure that is genuinely suited to me, rather than to a household of 2, or to a working schedule I no longer keep, or to the expectations that accumulated across a lifetime of doing things a particular way because that was simply how they were done. I have a neighbor who once told me she felt lost after her children left home because the whole architecture of her days had been built around their schedules. I understood exactly what she meant. When the structure that organized your time disappears, the first feeling is disorientation. But then, and this is the thing she came to see eventually, comes the extraordinary possibility of building something new. A structure of your own design. Days shaped around your energy, your priorities, your preferences. My mornings are a good example. Years ago, I met my neighbor Edna, who was in her late 70s when we first really talked. Edna had the most consistently clean, calm home I had ever been inside, and she maintained it with almost no visible effort. I asked her about it once, and she laughed softly and said, "I just tend to it, a little, every morning. Nothing dramatic, just a few things every day before anything else." I did not understand what she meant for a long time, but I do now. My mornings are built around exactly that, a short, unhurried sequence of small actions that keeps the house from ever feeling neglected. It took living alone to give me the flexibility to build that kind of rhythm and actually keep it. The fifth benefit is peace, and I mean that literally, the quality of quiet that settles over a house when you are the only one in it. I want to be clear. I am not saying peace is better than the noise of a full life. I raised a child in this house. I hosted holidays for many years. I had teenagers sleeping on the floor in my living room more times than I can count. And I will tell you honestly, I loved it. There was a particular kind of music that came with all of that, a texture of life that I still think about with real warmth. But there is something that a quiet house offers that is genuinely valuable. And I think it becomes more valuable as we get older. Silence gives you access to yourself. It gives you the space to notice things, how you actually feel, what is sitting in the back of your mind, what you need. When the house is always full of sound and motion, those signals get drowned out. Living alone means the quiet is available. You can choose to fill it, and some days you should, but you can also choose to let it be. The sixth benefit is the reduction of conflict. And I say this not with any bitterness, but simply as a fact of arithmetic. When you share a space with another person, no matter how deeply you love them, you are navigating two sets of preferences, two rhythms, two ways of seeing things every single day. That navigation is part of what makes a shared life rich, but it is also a source of friction. Small friction mostly, but constant. When you live alone, that friction largely disappears. The decisions you make about your home, your time, your food, your rest, they're uncontested. They're simply yours. I find that this reduction in daily negotiation has given me a kind of steadiness I did not have before. Not because I was always arguing, I wasn't, but because the energy that used to go into accommodation and consideration is now available for other things I choose. That is not nothing. The seventh benefit is self-awareness. And this is where I think living alone becomes genuinely transformative in a way that is hard to describe to someone who has not experienced it. When you are the only person in your house, you become very honest with yourself. There's no one else to look at when something goes wrong. No one else's habits to blame for the state of the kitchen or the pile of things by the door or the reason a room feels heavy rather than light. Everything that is true about your home is a reflection of your own choices, your own patterns, your own relationship with the space you inhabit. That is uncomfortable at first. I remember noticing in the early years after retirement that the house would drift in certain ways I did not like. Not dirty, but cluttered, weighted, somehow difficult to be in. And I had to sit with the knowledge that I was doing that, no one else, just me and my habits and the accumulated weight of things I had not made decisions about. What came out of that discomfort was something valuable, a much clearer picture of who I actually am and how I actually live. I learned what my real rhythms are. I learned which objects I was keeping out of habit and which ones I genuinely loved. And slowly, over years, through Edna's influence, through watching Yuki, through my own trial and considerable error, I built a home that matches the person I actually am. The eighth benefit is personal growth, and I think this is perhaps the most significant one, and the hardest to talk about without sounding grand about it. Living alone creates the conditions for change, not dramatic overnight change, the quiet, cumulative kind. The kind where you pick up a new habit and give it long enough to take root. Where you try something small, a different way of organizing, a different time of day for something, a different approach to a task you've always done the same way, and you are free to observe whether it actually works. Since retiring at 65, I have changed my relationship with this house more than I did in the previous 30 years I lived in it. Not because I had more money or more time in the usual sense, but because I had the sustained quiet to actually think, to know it was not working, to try something different. The house I live in now is the calmest and most consistently clean it has ever been in my entire adult life. I do not say that to impress anyone. I say it because I think it is the clearest proof I have that growth is still possible at 72, that we are not finished becoming who we are just because the children have grown and the career is over. There is still so much room to learn. The ninth benefit is something I want to call a sense of stewardship, a feeling that you are genuinely taking care of something that matters. When I was younger, caring for this house was one item on a very long list. It was background noise, something to manage between everything else. Now, it is something I do with attention, with intention. I notice things. A window that needs cleaning, a drawer that has become chaotic, a room that feels slightly off and takes me a moment to understand why. And I address these things not because I have to, but because I have learned to care about the quality of the space I live in. Edna used to say something I have thought about many times since she passed a few years ago. She said that a house knows whether you are paying attention to it. I think she was right in the only way that matters. When you tend to a space with genuine care, it responds. Not magically, just practically. A home that is tended daily never reaches the point of overwhelming disorder. There's a kind of momentum to it once you start. That sense of stewardship, the feeling of being genuinely responsible for and connected to the place you live, is one of the quiet gifts of living alone. No one else is managing it. It is yours to tend entirely. And there is real satisfaction in doing that well. The 10th benefit, and the one I want to leave you with, is this: the freedom to make decisions. This sounds simple, and in some ways it is. But after a long life of making decisions in consultation with a partner, in consideration of children, in alignment with a career's demands, the experience of being the sole decision maker in your own life is more significant than it sounds. Every choice I make about this house is mine. Every arrangement, every object I bring in or let go of, every shift in how I use a room or a space. There is no committee, there is no compromise. There is only me, with my best judgment and my own experience, making the calls that shape the place I live in and the life I live there. That is not loneliness. That is sovereignty. And I think there is a real difference between the two, even if the house is quiet. I want to say one more thing before we close. If you are newly alone, whether by loss or by circumstance or by choice, I know that not all of this feels like benefit right now. Some of it may feel like absence. That is real, and I would never dismiss it. But what I have described today is also real. It came to me slowly, through the kind of small daily attention that only the quiet of living alone made possible. None of it arrived all at once. You do not have to rush toward any of it. Just tend to what is in front of you today, one small thing at a time. The rest has a way of following. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What is one benefit of living alone that has surprised you? Something you did not expect, or something it took you a long time to recognize. I read every comment and I genuinely look forward to your words. And if this video was meaningful to you, please do subscribe right there below so you do not miss what I share next. Thank you for spending this time with me. It means more than I can say. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.